Hey there. Welcome back to Snaketown, USA. Or YSA. Yharnam SA. Welcome back to Bloodborne. We are immediately going to become a healthy conversationalist, as there is a handsomely dressed gentleman over here. Hello there.
Ah, a new face, are you? And an accomplished hunter, it would appear. I am Volta, Master of the League. Members of the League cleanse the streets of all the filth that's spread about during the hunt. Like any half-decent hunter ought to, you know? Haven't you seen enough of these wretched beasts? Freakish slugs and mad doctors. Sentence these fiends to death with the help of your League confederates. What do you say? Why not join the League?
Do you have like a pamphlet or something I can read first, or?
Yes, as a hunter well should.
Okay then.
Commit this to heart. Our own Carol rune, symbol of the League.
Impurity, huh?
The night brims with defiled scum and is permeated by their rotten stench. Just think, now you're all set to hunt and kill to your heart's content. Hunt in cooperation with your fellows, your League confederates.
Well, thanks, Ned Kelly. I guess I'll attune that rune to my soul at the Hunter's Dream, and then come right back to cooperate with some League members. I haven't quite drunk the Kool-Aid on that yet, but okay. I cut out me going to the Hunter's Dream there because it was very boring. I didn't do anything. I just put the rune on. Well, we're a League member now.
No, there is one thing you must know. By the oath of the League, those who bear its rune will see vermin. Vermin writhe deep within all filth and are the root of man's impurity. All vermin are to be crushed. The League exists to expunge all vermin, ridding us of any trace of human corruption. And so, until we are rid of all vermin, you must continue to hunt and kill. This bloody fate is ours alone. Do not expect the world to grasp our work. But remember, the Confederates will always have my blessing. And each other. Always.
You really could have picked a better name for your faction. But okay. I guess we're a Confederate now. Man, look at those physics. It's good shit. Really like it. So the League is a co-op covenant. It is one of the first covenants that many players are likely to see. Basically, when you cooperate with someone and help kill a boss, or engage in PvP, you will get a vermin, just as our new friend Valter says that we are apparently able to see now. And then you can crush the vermin to level up your standing in the League. And you may be asking yourself, what does that do? Nothing. It doesn't do anything. It's just for status. Although after the first 5, you do get something pretty special, which we will see later on. Because, there are exactly enough vermin in the game world to reach the first rank in the Covenant, without having to do any actual co-op. So, later on, way later on, we actually will be seeing what happens when you crush 5 vermin. So the idea behind the League is rooted in kind of it's a little bit of almost a Japanese kind of theme of impurity at the root of mankind and all that stuff. The idea is that impurity, much like the League's runes and stuff, the reason why I'm just standing here is so I have time to explain all this, by the way, impurity is at the heart of mankind, and in Bloodborne, it manifests as an actual physical grub that you can crush under your heel to eliminate the impurity that exists within us all. Now, Bloodborne is very clear about the fact that vermin may not actually exist, and you only see them because you want to see them. Now, I don't remember if I actually read the description of the vermin, but that's pretty much what it says. It says that people who are in the League see vermin, whether the vermin actually are there or not. So, hey, whatever you choose to believe, I guess you either disagree or agree with Vulture's stance that you can remove impurity by literally crushing it under your heel. So it's back to Snake Town. Except now, it's not just snakes exploding out of people's heads. It's also snakes that have formed like tumbleweeds. The Forbidden Woods is a very strange place. I don't really know what the lore behind these creatures is. I don't know if there is any. I don't actually think there is. I think they're just big snakes who live here. Like, I believe the big snakes may very well be indigenous creatures that do poison damage and are generally very obnoxious. If they were put here, because they do show up in the Chalice Dungeon, if they were put here, I imagine that they were brought out of the Chalice Dungeons by the Byrgenwerth scholars to kind of create a literal lethal barrier between Yharnam and Byrgenwerth. Maybe. Like, I imagine that if they had to put in some lore explanation for the big-ass snakes, that might be what they would go with. But personally, I think the snakes are just indigenous creatures. Like, they just live here. This is a poison forest, and there are poison snakes. Now, on the other hand, these giant gravestones, which I believe are called, like, Graves of the Old Ones or something, I think. There's nothing actually buried here. The art book talks about how they are, like, symbolic graves more than anything. Like, underneath these giant gravestones, there are no bodies of whatever great ones are. They just symbolize the connection that the great ones have with mankind and all of that stuff. And there's a bonus feature at the end of this video where we are going to talk about that a little bit, because Bloodborne is starting to very slowly play its hand on the whole Lovecraft mythos thing. You might have noticed that it is slowly starting to creep up on us, much like this giant snake ball is attempting to creep up on poor Jill right now. But it's not gonna work. I'm a master snake wrangler. By the way, if you're afraid of snakes, you may want to not watch this episode of Bloodborne. I don't know if you've noticed. Snakes are the theme of this entire episode, and there is a later episode where spiders are a prominent theme. So this is my warning. This whole episode is about snakes, so if you're afraid of snakes, don't watch it. I honestly probably should have said that like 5 minutes ago, but hindsight is 20/20, I suppose, and poisonous, as it turns out. I honestly don't have much more to say about the forest itself. I kind of talked at length about how I feel about the area in the last episode, and when I talked about how I don't quite like the forest, I was referring more to this part than the last part, because this area is a lot more disconnected, it's a lot weirder of a shape, and it's a lot harder to navigate if you don't know where you're going. Thankfully though, I'm a professional, and I never ever do anything wrong in this game, so I know exactly what I'm doing. Speaking of knowing exactly what I'm doing, instead of aggroing these snake men one at a time, I just aggroed all of them. Thankfully, as you saw earlier, Ludwig's Holy Blade, it makes pretty short work of it. I'm actually glad I picked it up. I wasn't going to, because I don't use heavier weapons very much in this game, but I figured, you know, we tried out the Kirk Hammer, we might as well try this thing out as well. As it turns out, it's pretty good. However, it doesn't, unlike the Kirk Hammer, the charge attack does not have hyper armor frames, so it's a little bit harder to get off a full charge attack with it. The sword part's still good though. Oh, that's a lot of snakes down there. Maybe let's not go in that direction just yet. Now, I was trying to do this in the last episode, and I don't think I did it a single time correctly. You can parry and riposte the snake men, because aside from the snake heads, they're pretty much the same as the Yharnam townies that have the axes, so, you know, parrying the snake men is worth it if you're good at it, which I'm not. By the way, you might have noticed just there that we picked up our first bloodstone chunk. I think that was the first one. We might have a couple by now. I don't know. I'm not watching the video. I'm actually turned away from the screen right now. But, we are picking up bloodstone chunks, which means that we are in the part of the game where they are starting to roll them out to us. Sort of. We haven't quite reached the point where they're going to become commonplace just yet, but we are reaching that, like, that transition phase where you got a couple of them, but not a whole lot to work with. And so, I am going to be very carefully picking and choosing what I want to upgrade. Because there's not a whole lot of bloodstone chunks to go around here. Which sucks, actually, because, like, I actually, for some of these weapons, really could use it. Because, early on, the bloodstone chunks are better used for, say, weapons that have low damage, because it will bring them up to the level of, say, the Kirkhammer, or maybe the Ludwig's Holy Blade, which already have pretty high base damage, so it's kind of a mess. The layout for the upgrades is a little bit of a mess in this, because we could have gotten twin shards very early on. Like, you can go from, oh my god, look at my health. You can go from standard shards to twin shards in like one area if you go to Yahar'gul early, but we're not going to get chunks for quite some time, and so we're kind of stuck in this rut of having kind of crappy damage all across the board. Okay, that is, I promise that's the end of me ranting about the shitty upgrade system in this game. It would have been fine. It honestly would have been fine if they had kept the upgrade levels of materials from the previous Souls games, but no, they increased the amount of upgrade materials that everything takes for some reason. It's very, very strange. I like this really, really big gravestone over here. Like, there's one that's just kind of looming in the background that's like really, really huge and towers over everything else. It's like the size of a skyscraper. It's really cool. You might see it up here when I cross over this hill and shove my fist in this pig's asshole. I'm getting even more of a fan of doing that as time goes on. Like, I already liked it, but now I'm starting to love it. This is just, oh. Yeah, there we go. Finally. It took me like 1,000 attempts, but I finally managed to pull off a parry on the Snake Manman. Snake Manman. So you'll notice that I'm carrying around a lot of soul blood echoes. Blood echo soul tech scrap. That's going to be a running theme, because stuff is starting to get a little bit more expensive, and so I have to save up my pennies a little bit. But there's no time for worrying about that now. We have picked up the healer set from Dark Souls 1, except it's all fucked up looking now. You know, the healers, the guys with the red robes, the ones with the 10 banishment catalysts, sealed away New Londo, those guys. Yeah, that's what this outfit reminds everyone of. Although the Grave Guards, of course, their lore is... You know what, actually, thinking about it, the lore behind those guys is pretty damn similar, too. Because the Grave Guards were in charge of guarding the forest from inhabitants of Yharnam and Cathedral Ward who wanted to come over into the forest. Like, that guy, at the password door, he was a Grave Guard who abandoned his post and then died. And then even in death, his soul supposedly still guards the entrance to the Forbidden Woods, or whatever the hell. Something like that. And now we're wearing the clothes of the grave guards. We're not going to take that elevator up because that elevator is just another shortcut back to the lantern. And it's funny, the forest actually has, I believe, 3 shortcuts back to the lamp, and each one is progressively longer than the last. Like, that shortcut there is actually longer than just running down the first elevator where Walter is, and then jumping off a cliff to get to where we need to go to fight the boss. Which I believe you will see. I believe you're going to see that later on. For now, though, swamps and more pigs. So I kind of wanted to force the pig to charge there, and normally they wait until they're a little bit closer, but I threw a pebble at him, which counts as an attack, which forced him to do the charge. It's clever. It's baiting is what it is. I'm a master baiter. I mean, a master at baiting. Hooray! Also, these guys are back. Remember these guys from Central Yharnam with the weird crawling? Yeah, they're back, and they're still just as shitty as they were. Maybe they got their legs eaten off by the pig. Maybe that's like retroactive lore for the guys in Central Yharnam. Maybe they got their legs bitten off by the pig that was in the sewers there too. Like, maybe these guys are just pig victims. And in that case, I'm pretty much putting them out of their misery because they look partially digested, so maybe I'm doing a good thing. Yeah, pigs are looking kind of grosser now. Now they have, like, boils on their head and stuff. It's not great. And hey, just like a certain other pig in certain other Dark Souls type games, say perhaps the first, there's fire pits around that pig, so if you don't feel like fighting him, you can bait him into running into the fire and killing himself, and then you can have some nice roast bacon, which is delicious and filling, at the same time as giving you lots of blood echoes. What a stupid joke. I think I made that exact same joke in the Dark Souls Let's Play. Regarding the fang boar in that. So here is the final shortcut. This one does not go back to the lamp. However, this little gate separates a little cliff you can drop down to get to the boss area. So, if you just run here, it's actually shorter than all of the rest of the shortcuts. And now, there is a bonus feature at the end of this episode about the co-op in Bloodborne, co-op and invasions, and why I think Bloodborne's co-op is kind of lacking. But I haven't actually shown co-op off yet. So, for this episode, we're going to be palling around with the younger Madaris twin, one of our fellow Confederates. So, we're just going to be hanging out with this guy for a little bit, because he's a pretty badass guy. I mean, look at him. Look at his clothes. The Madaris twin is wearing the same outfit as an enemy that we have seen exactly once. If you remember, when we were going through Cathedral Ward for the first time, we were... Hey, that's Henrik. What? Okay. I guess Henrik was a Confederate. Anyway, when we were going through Upper Cathedral Ward for the first time, we dropped down, way down into a little gutter area before taking an elevator back up. The Madaris twins, both of them, the younger and older one, which doesn't really make sense because they're twins, are wearing the outfit of the enemy that resides down there. We're going to put on Gascoigne's clothes for old time's sake, and not because it has superior defense against a certain enemy that we may be facing in the near future. We look kind of weird, but that's okay. It's fine. Playing dress-up is a very important part of the Souls games. And so is buffing your defense against this boss fight that we are just about to walk into with our two friends here. Because you see, The Shadows of Yharnam is a triple boss fight. And it's actually really hard. It is really, really hard to fight these guys by yourself at the point in the game that I am at right now. So, we have customized our Fashionborn to be good against fire damage, because all of these guys do a ton of fire damage. Except for this guy with the Tonitrus, who also does lightning damage. So we have made this fight even. It is now a 3v3. Us versus these dudes. But as you are perhaps about to find out, it's not quite as even as it initially appears. Also because the Madara twins get known now. Oh no! The Shadows of Yharnam are actually snake people. So technically this is like a 3-on-9 fight. Because there's like 3 snakes per guy. So like, okay, sure. But yeah, this fight has 3 phases. One for taking out each Shadow of Yharnam, and then another last phase that's especially fucked up, in which the Shadows will get slightly, progressively more taken over by the snakes, and will do even more fire damage each time. So this is kind of becoming a clusterfuck. There's just bodies everywhere, and I need to be careful because my buddies, they're not really doing a great job of protecting me here. So, they are providing pretty good distractions, though. So yeah, the Shadows of Yharnam. The Shadows of Yharnam are the classic gang squad boss. But if you bring some help along, we get by with a little help from our friends. What a bunch of losers those snakes are. Thanks for the help, guys. Sorry I murdered you, Henrik. Eileen wanted me to do it. Well, that was an eventful day of adventuring. I can't wait to go back to the Hunter's Dream and relax. Because I'm getting a little bit tired of snakes and poison. Hi.
Welcome home, good hunter.
I desire level ups. Lots and lots and lots of level ups. Leveling up is, of course, starting to get a little bit expensive, so I'm gonna have to meter how much I level my stuff up. Gotta start putting some points into Arcane, because there are some Arcane tools I want to show off. But we'll worry about that when we get there.
Told me about the church, about the gods and their love. But do the gods love their creations? I am a doll created by you humans. Would you ever think to love me? Of course. I do love you. Isn't that how you've made me?
I appreciate your pragmatic stance on love, doll, but,
you find your worth in the waking world.
I feel like there's a little bit more nuance to it than that. Ah well. See you next time. Co-op in Bloodborne is weird. It's a strange mixture of the tried and tested system found in the Souls games and its own unique thing. The basics are pretty much the same. Early on in the game, we picked up a couple of bells, one to summon other people and one to be summoned. Ring the former, and you can bring people who are ringing the latter into your game world, and vice versa. Summoning costs 1 insight, but if you beat a boss together, you get it back at the end. This is different from the other Souls games in that there is no putting down summon signs. You don't get to choose your partner. The system has its flaws. For one, there are several areas in the game where co-op is straight up not possible because there's no boss. There are also a number of stopgaps in place to prevent players from getting stuck. You have to have opened every shortcut in Cathedral Ward before you could summon someone there, for example. You also need PS Plus in order to use any of the online functions in Bloodborne, which is its own ridiculous case that I won't get into here, but it really sucks and is stupid. Additionally, Invading in Bloodborne really sucks. Thankfully, in this one, it's not in the invader's favor, as opposed to the other Souls games where they can have every advantage under the sun over you and not have to give anything up. By default, you're not open to being invaded in Bloodborne, except for a few specific areas. In order to be invaded, you must be ringing your co-op bell, which spawns a unique enemy somewhere in the level that rings one of her own. Anyone ringing the invasion bell while that enemy is alive can come into your world to try and take you out. But you see the problem with this, I'm sure. It means that you literally cannot invade in Bloodborne without coming across someone already searching for a partner. More often than not, fights are going to be 2-on-1 because of this, and as we've seen so far, fights with hunters go on for a very long time in this game. In my opinion, this is a perfect example of why invasions are necessary to the Souls game formula. There's no way around saying it. Invasions in Bloodborne are screwed. The system just doesn't work outside of organized PvP. It's poorly implemented and just as shoddily balanced as it is in the rest of the Souls games. But Bloodborne doesn't really lose anything for not having it, I feel. There's already enough creeping dread to be found in the game. You don't need the anxiety that comes with wondering if you're going to be invaded or not. I think the game is better off without that feeling entirely. Losing progress because someone came into your game world and curb stomped you is simply not fun, in any capacity, ever. In Bloodborne, it'd be even worse than the other Souls games, because of unrecoverable resources like bullets and blood vials, and since it doesn't have a humanity system, you'd be open to invasions all the time. Invasions just do not work in the kind of game that Bloodborne is. But it's at least a little bit because of a fundamental flaw in invasions, not just the game itself. The trouble with invasions that makes them so hard to balance is the idea of losing single-player progress because of multiplayer interactions. The Souls games are single-player games with multiplayer elements at their most base level. From Software's way of solving the issue so far has been to completely sidestep it. You have to open yourself up to invasions, either by being human in Dark Souls or ringing a bell in Bloodborne. What I'm opposed to with that solution is that the invader has infinite time to become as overpowered as they need to be to completely smite you in your only encounter with them. So it doesn't matter if you take that chance or not, because any player could do that to you. You're equally likely to run into a hacker or a min-max build as you are a player who wants a fair fight. Therein lies the flaw I'm speaking of. The Souls games have never done enough to soften the blow of a real person setting you back. You lose a hell of a lot, and the invader loses nothing. Having to choose to open yourself up to invasions is irrelevant. Being able to remove the possibility of being invaded does not make the system any more nuanced or balanced. For 6 or 7 years now, people have been saying, well, if you don't like invasions, don't go human. But it doesn't matter if I like invasions or not. They're fundamentally broken because dying to a human player is very different than dying to a computer-controlled enemy, but the games have always treated them the same. And until they find a way to resolve this issue without going the way they have in Bloodborne and practically nixing it entirely, I think I'll stick to playing in offline mode. Well, the cat's slowly climbing out of the bag. We've met the shadows of Yharnam, and things just got a lot more complicated. As I probably mentioned in the video, the name Shadows of Yharnam is a bit of a turn of phrase. They aren't the remains of inhabitants of Yharnam the town, but rather the cloaked bodyguards of Yharnam the Thumerian queen. You see, Yharnam the town is named after her, in honor of the contributions to the church's forbidden knowledge she provided. She was long gone by the time the Bergenworth scholars popped the cap on the dungeons and started poking around, but her legacy had very important implications for the world of Bloodborne. Some of you who know the game's lore and backstory might be surprised that I'm covering this so early on. Don't worry, I'm not going to play my whole hand right now. Queen Yharnam is going to be pivotally important later on in the game, but for the moment she provides a good reason to talk about the Great Ones. What do we know about the Great Ones so far? Hardly anything except that they are supposedly omniscient beings that have, for lack of a better description, knowledge of the secrets of Bloodborne's universe. People like Carol have managed to successfully understand their words, whatever and whenever they are, and the Byrgenwerth scholars do endless research into their nature. The insight we've been gaining from exploring Yharnam is the same as their research, furthering our knowledge of the horrible secrets that lie under the surface of our world. So that makes Queen Yharnam's part in all this pretty understandable. The Byrgenwerth scholars came across her or her lineage in some form in the Chalice dungeons, and used this knowledge to attempt to make contact with these mysterious Great Ones. We'll find out very soon if they were successful or not, but you can probably guess. And so we've come pretty much full circle on Byrgenwerth. The source of the schism is now obvious. Contacting and understanding these Great Ones after the discovery of Queen Yharnam was priority number one for the scholars. Several key leaders of the school, even some students, had differing ideas on how to accomplish it. We still don't know of the Healing Church's method of contact, and we won't learn about it for a very long time, but now we know Byrgenwerth's. They were inspired by what they learned from Yharnam. Their investigation into the dungeons had bore fruit in multiple ways, and so they sought a medium to talk to the Great Ones because they themselves could not. The Thumerians had to get their knowledge from somewhere, and the scholars' logical thought process was that they could just do as the Labyrinth's creators did, find someone to communicate through. In the coming episodes, we'll see the results of their digging, and the possible remnants of the Thumerian line, and then you can decide for yourself if emulating them is a good idea.